Alright, so today we're looking at Nyx. I really like Nyx. She's actually pretty good on the high end. Like, I'd give her like an A tier for high end content, but she's pretty mediocre on the low end. Overall, though, a pretty good frame. So we're going to be looking at her. Now, first of all, we'll of course go over her build or her abilities. Passive makes her 20% less accurate when targeting Nyx. Mind control. This lets you take over targets, and they become your ally. Since it counts as a crowd control, it does not work on Eximus units while their overguard is active, but if you take out their overguard, you can use it on an Eximus, which is quite nice. Psychic bolts. This on its own is not terrible. It shoots out 6 bolts that drain enemy defense by 80%, but it's not permanent, though you should usually be able to kill them in the time. It also slows them down. Chaos sends out or does a big ring that causes enemies to get confused and shoot each other, kind of like the radiation status effect. Very similar to radiating disarm with Loki. And your 4 is absorb. Go into this little like pose here I can show it and become invulnerable to damage. And if enemies shoot you or allies, you build up damage, and then when it ends, you manually end it. You do a big explosion. That on its own is not amazing. You can make funny builds with Assimilate, which is a very good way to use Nyx, but it also does not scale incredibly well since you take more energy the more damage you take. So when you're on the high end and enemies do a ton of damage, you get all of your energy drained in a single hit. So we will not be building for her 4. Instead, we are going to build for the rest of her kits. So this is what the build looks like that I've got going on right now. We want to go all in on crowd control because that's what she shines at. And we can always get damage out of in weapons, like the Incarnon weapons, or there are some other weapons that are quite strong and can do plenty of damage on their own. They don't always need help. So we've got Gloom as our subsume. Now this used to be like the go-to, but I don't see many people using it anymore. I think it is still quite strong. I don't know why I don't see as many people use it. Maybe they just got bored. But there are a lot of good damage options. This is a good choice though for her because you get the slow. Once Molt Augmented builds up, the slow is going to go from 66% to 87%, I think, or something like that, right? So it's going to be pretty strong. Now it does snapshot, I believe. So once you have Molt Augmented built up, you need to end it and recast it, but that's not that big of a deal. So between the crazy slow we can get from Gloom, the radiation-like effect from her 3, and taking over an enemy with our 1, we have a lots of ways to keep enemies off of us. Plus her passive, which makes it so we are 20% less likely to get hit. Now, what's nice about her 1 is that if you take over an enemy, you can actually aggro Eximus units, and I'll show you that real quick. Oh, I gotta kill these enemies first. Here, so we will do 1 normal heavy gunner, just so I might as well just do all of them so you can see the armor strip. So, spawn them in, we won't have them paused. Run in, you gotta strip one of them of their overguard before we can cast their 1 on them. But after we do, cast their 1, it becomes our ally. And then it will start attacking enemies. And as you can see, like I'm right next to this guy right here. Look, I'm right here, and they're completely ignoring me to shoot at the little ally we have. What is it called? Aggro. Aggro is one of the only ways to effectively crowd control, quotation marks, Eximus units, because it isn't actually affecting the Eximus units themselves. It's an outside effect where the game is telling the AI, hey, this has a higher aggro value than everything else, so attack it. So it actually is quite effective at keeping Eximus off you, so long as they see it first or it gets close enough after you've been near it, which is very nice. Loki's decoy does the same thing. I think decoys is better, but that would take up Helmand, and we don't want to do that. You could go decoys your 4 though and combine it with mind control. That would not be a bad option. But that's not what we're doing right now. So I'm gonna kill those guys, and we'll come back into here. Go back to the build. So we have Mind Freak for the one of our augments. It's for her one to give more damage to our guy that we mind control. It doesn't do amazing damage on the low end, but on the high end, with your armor stripping, because enemy damage scales way higher than enemy health, and the damage is based off of when the enemy we take over, plus modifiers from shooting the enemy, as well as the augment. Oh yeah, I should probably mention that. I totally forgot about that. So when you take over an enemy, if you shoot them, you can see the buff on the top right before they start attacking. If you shoot the enemy during that period, you can build up even more damage. See now, 1291. Quite nice. So you can do that to build up even more damage. So we have this so that our guy, once we face high level enemies, can destroy enemies. Our passive to make us give us better survivability. Our 4 and 3 for Gloom for even more survivability from the slow and disorientation. And then our 2 is for armor strip, which with enough strength can full armor strip. Now, we have a bit of a problem in this build of not having enough strength until Molt Augmented is built up. We're going to need, what, 70, 80 kills or so? About 80 kills, I think, to before we can full armor strip with our 2. There is ways to get around this, like Archon shards, or swapping something out for, let me see, anything for strength, even the small amount from Augur Seeker. It should be enough, right? No, 99% unfortunate still, though. You don't need too much strength, so you either put something on for strength or wait for more augments and build up. So it can full armor strip. The big issue is it normally only has 6 bolts, but with pacifying bolts, another augment, it goes from 6 to 9, and enemies are confused on top of being slowed. So this is another slow that also confuses them, right? Aggro, confusion, slow, and armor strip, mass confusion, mass slow. That's a lot of crowd control going on right there. Now, on top of that, you do need to deal with survivability when you do get hit. Now, most of the time, if you're playing Nyx right and you're careful, you won't be getting hits. But if you do get hits, you need to not die immediately. So we have a shield gate build set up. I know some people don't like shield gating, but unfortunately, it's the only way to actively survive, or actively is not the right word, to actually survive on high-end content, because health and damage reduction do not scale well. So we have brief respite. It's unfortunately not matching my aura. We would have more leeway to switch mods out here and be able to put an Exilus in if we had it matching, but I'm out of form on aura form right now. So we have this for 150% energy spent to convert to shields without overshields. So if we bottom out our energy, we cast like R2, which we're casting all the time for armor strip. That's going to give us almost all of our shields back. If you throw in like one augur mod on your secondary weapon, like Augur Seeker or Augur Pact, or if you did have Augur Secrets on your Nyx, you would definitely be able to get that so that you can have all of your shields back from just your Psychic Bolts. And then if you cast your 3, that will give all of your shields back without Augur mod. So this with catalyzing shields, oh yeah, that's how we get our shields so low, is catalyzing shields. That way we get our full 1.33 second shield gates once we refill it. That's going to give us a lot of survivability, a lot of leeway, so if we do actually get hit, we're not totally dead. Equilibrium for energy as well as energize. You don't need energize. However, if you want to spam your abilities, you are going to need it, because equilibrium is necessary to upkeep uh, casting regularly, but if you don't have energize, it's going to get rough. But there are other ways to get energy. Then precision intensify, since most of our strength is just going to matter on gloom for the slow, because strength does nothing for our 3. It does help our 2, but not that much, because we only need a little bit of, only 25% strength before we can full strip, so we don't need a lot in here. And it does help the augment for our 1, but we don't really need it, since once we get to high-end content and the enemy's damage is so high when we take them over, they don't really need that much extra damage, even though we are running Mind Freak. For the Exilus slot, you can run really whatever you want. I would probably go sure-footed or handspring, but you can also go something like co-action drift. That way you wouldn't need another auger mod maybe, or endurance drift for energy max and parkour velocity. Another underrated one that I mentioned in previous videos, Mobilize. Mobilize is really good for the parkour velocity and super cheap and super common. Now that is the gist of the build for Nyx herself. For pets, I personally would probably go Nautilus or Diariga. Diariga because of the priming is really nice. Or Nautilus. Oh yeah, and because Diariga has the amazing synth deconstruct mystic bond, being able to spam your ability. I'm not gonna go over because I go over in way too many videos. If you want, you can look up a video about how arc coil and manifold bond work on Diarrhea. Long story short, it's busted. So being able to have Diarrhea spam stuff, Guardian will proc all the time. Synth deconstruct procking on like every enemy for more energy from equilibrium. Mystic bond to proc for free abilities. Though actually, I take that back. Mystic Bond is bad in this situation because if you get a free ability from Mystic Bond, it doesn't consume energy, and then that means it doesn't give you your shield gate. So if you're going to use Diariga for this, do not use Mystic Bond. I have a separate build that's exactly the same. The only thing I switch out is Restorative Bond instead because it's nice. But you can really run whatever you want for the most part on this. The weapon is just as a stat stick for the crit chance, so we get bonus crit damage final multiplier from Tenacious Bond. Then as far as weapons go, you can run anything you want because the whole point of Nyx here is just crowd control. Crowd control so you don't die and to help your teammates not die. There isn't really weapons with amazing synergy. If I were to run something specific, it would probably be an AoE weapon because, well, you know, AoE's amazing. And this is a horde game. You can run Paris. I'd bring up Paris a lot because I love it. It's a great weapon. Any of the Incarnons are really good, but there's also non-Carnons that you can use, such as Convectrix. Convectrix amazing for single targets. This thing is insanely strong. Stalta, Phage is also a good option. I don't know where my Phage is at. Okay, I was gonna say I didn't delete it, did I? That would suck. Tenet Tetra is a super underrated weapon as well. Then you would probably run something for like Thrax if you're doing Void Cascade here, like first or whatever. The point is, you can really use anything with this build, and you don't need a specific focus class either. You can run any of these and it'll work. Mad Eye would be nice for power transfer because then you get casting speed, which is actually really, really nice to have on Nyx. I don't think it's totally necessary, but it is nice. If you were to go for Archon Shards, I would recommend maybe a bit of strength so that Gloom, once Mole Augmented builds up, caps out at its 90%, I think is its slow cap, either 90 or 95. But that would help you hit the slow cap on Gloom and not have to wait for a build up on your Psychic Bolts if you don't have other mods for strength. Or casting speed, again, would be nice to have on her. Then if you feel like you don't have enough consistency with the armor strip, you could go 2 green Archon Shards, but I don't think that's really necessary. So we'll show the effectiveness of her armor strip and stuff. So if you press the 2, it obviously can only tag so many enemies. I forgot we don't have our strength built up. Hang on, that's embarrassing. That's one of the problems with Volt Augmented in the Simulacrum, because trying to build it up is impossible. So in this case, we're going to replace it temporarily with Sling Strength so that we can full strip. So we do this, yada yada yada, go in, and now bam. It'll shoot out 9 volts, so it caps out stripping 9 enemies, but if you're facing annoying enemies, you can just spam it, right? Oh no, it looks like there's a cap on it. The 9 enemies you tag are the only ones that can be armor stripped, maybe. Interesting. Still though, if you're fighting enemies, most of the time the 9 bolts are going to be enough for what's directly in front of you to then kill them. Then you cast this, and it will show normally. Oh no, because there's stuck. Here we go. Unpause AI. So we do this. They're all slow. Cast the eye. That will get aggro. Disorient them. So anybody that's not an Eximus is then going to be freaking out. Also, look at that. The animation for when they get disoriented from your 3, they can't do anything until it's finished, and the slow makes it take forever to finish. So, like, we cast that and look. This guy's freaking out, and he's having the longest headache of his life. Then we can slow them even more without See that, dude? This man can't even do anything. And once he stands up, he's gonna shoot his enemies, not us. So Nyx is amazing for crowd control, just incredible. Make everybody have massive headaches, and they forgot their schizo meds. Amazing frame, also very aesthetically pleasing in my opinion. This skin for her looks very, very good. We'll take off the bow so it's easier to see the fashion in case you want to see it. I don't know if anyone actually cares about that, but here it is. I really like this is a good way to use the Conquera ephemera. I think it fits really well on her with this skin. It's quite nice, quite sexy. So that's about it for Nyx. Just a hopefully short video going over her and how good she is. So if you have problems surviving in endgame stuff and you don't want to be every other average Joe that just slaps on Revenant, then try building Nyx. And unlike Revenant, I guess maybe if you have Mesmer skin, he can help teammates, but Nyx affects the enemies themselves, so you can help your teammates survive too. Very good frame, and I really enjoy it. So if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. If you want to see more low quality, horrible audio and video content, then make sure to subscribe. Adios.